Hello friends, welcome to our channel Piping Mantra. This is the continuation to previous video. I will link part 1 in the description box below. So let's get started. Pipe rack column spacing shall be decided based on the economic of pipe span as well as truss arrangement to accommodate double the span for road crossing or avoid underground obstructions. We can allow double the line spacing by adding horizontal structure member called spandrels. The civil or structural engineer should be consulted to review the economic of approach. Based on the economic, the width calculation as we have seen, the number of levels 2 tier of 30 feet wide or 3 tier of 20 feet wide rack will be decided. However, the civil or structural engineer should be consulted to review the economic approach. First, we will see the gap between the tiers. It shall be decided on the basis of the largest diameter pipeline and its branching. The difference between the bottom line of pipe in the rack and the bottom of branch as it leaves the rack shall be decided carefully to avoid any interface due to support, insulation, size of branch, etc. All branch line from the main line on the pipe rack shall be taken aesthetically on a common top of steel. Normally this gap should be 1650 mm. However, it can be calculated with the branch size and header size. Adjust elevation up or down for horizontal line when making a change in direction. This will avoid blocking space for future lines. The first tier elevation, you can refer this particular typical cross section of pipe rack. Elevation of the rack piping is determined by highest requirement of the headroom over the main road, headroom for the access to equipment under pipe rack, headroom under line interconnecting the pipe rack and the equipment outside the pipe rack. For offside, clearance beneath pipe rack shall be 2.2 meter minimum both in longitudinal and transverse direction for man movement. Road clearance shall be 7 meter for main road and 5 meter for secondary road. Considering support for branch pipe, BOP should be 2.4 meter minimum. The size of beam supporting the pipe rack piping should also be taken into account when considering headroom. Pipe rack arrangement should be developed to suit the specific plant requirement. Let's see what are the line location in the pipe rack. We can first see the single level pipe rack. Regardless of service, heavy lines like very large diameter lines or a large line full of liquid are placed over or near the pipe rack columns. Centrally loaded column and reduced bending moment on a beam will result in a lighter structure design. Next to these lines are placed all process line and relief lines. Those process line which interconnect equipment on the same side of the rack should be near the edge of the rack bank. Lines which interconnect equipment located on both sides of the rack should be closer to the utility lines and can be placed either side of the rack. Utility lines are in the center portion of the rack. A general sequence of utility lines are as shown. Position of product line is influenced by their routing after leaving the plant limit. Utility lines serving individually one or two equipment item should be on the same side of the rack as the equipment to which they connect. As we have seen earlier, blowdown should on higher elevation like we did here. Steam line or higher temperature line which required flexibility, space for the loop should be considered. Cable tray can be located on center pipe rack if space permits, otherwise we can locate it on the outside of the pipe rack with cantilever. Let's see multi-level pipe rack. Various factors shall be considered while locating each line's wall and instrument in the pipe rack. In standard process unit pipe rack, process lines are located on the lower level, utility lines are on next level, and separate top level is arranged for electrical and instrument cable trays. We have to consider future spacing 20% as we have discussed earlier. Generally, those process lines should be located on the top tier which interconnect two nozzles elevated higher than the top tier. Process lines with one end lower than the bottom tier elevation can run either in the top or bottom rack. If both ends of the process line are lower than the bottom tier, the line should be located in the bottom tier. The elevation of the line can also be influenced by wall and instrument in the line. Often a more convenient access platform can be provided for wall arrangement in the top tier of pipe rack. This sketch shows platform walkway arrangement to walls, relief walls and instrument located in the pipe rack. The preferred location of the lines with orifice is near the edge of the pipe rack with orifice flange near the column for more convenient portable ladder access should be provided. Designers should avoid locating pipelines over a centerline of the structure column for supporting so that column can be extended for future piperack expansion. When flanges or flange wall are required on two adjacent lines, the flanges are to be staggered. Thermal expansion or contraction must be accommodated by keeping sufficient clearance at the location where the movement will occur. The clearance of the piperack line from the structural piperack column is to be established based on the sizes furnished by the civil or structural engineer based on column arrangement in layout. After analyzing all the requirement and arrangement, the dimension to be round off for the next whole number. So guys, this is a wrap up for part 2. We are going to continue this topic in part 3. Please do watch. So guys, please do like, share, comment, subscribe to our channel and follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you want us to prepare a video on some certain topic, let us know in the comment section. And please don't forget to press the bell icon to get the all notification. Thank you.